How do you approach, what's your advice for students trying to get better at answering questions with sources?
I would always look out for the perspective of the author, because some sources can be detailing a very specific moment in time. You have to look at the broader context. I remember one source was from a secondary source, and it was by a teacher. And I remember thinking, oh, there's a limitation in this, in that she is an educator and her purpose is to educate. Maybe that's not that important. But I did end up putting it in. Go on.
I was going to say, how did you approach actually writing the answer? Like, did you have a particular sentence starter that you always went with? What was the first thing you usually said with those kind of questions?
The first question always has to answer the question. It's your topic sentence. That's a given. But be extra clear with your topic sentence and limit it down to one idea rather than multiple micro ideas. Just keep it nice and clear and simple, and make a judgment. I mean, if that's what the question's asking for example, if it says to evaluate, you're obviously going to have to make a judgment on that. But sometimes you're just going to have to begin by brainstorming before you write.
Great. And what about the other type of short answers that you could potentially face? Just a general short answer question. Could you have some structural advice?
5 markers, that's a page.
And that's a written page?
Yes.
Even if it went beyond the lines provided, would you sometimes go over, or did you have like a mindset that, hey, whatever the amount of lines they give me, I'm always going to make sure I go a little bit over?
No, I didn't do that. No. No, I wouldn't do that, because there's no point. And if you do go over the lines, sometimes it can mean that you're not concise enough, which is an indication that you need to improve on your writing. Maybe create a vocabulary list, the go-to words that can augment your writing, that can sort of change up your argument a bit. Yep. So 5 markers I found to be really easy because they're short and they're snappy, but you got to stuff a lot in there. For 5 markers, you got to have a lot of evidence.
Great. So you would always have a topic sentence and then about 4 or 5 points for a 5 marker. Would that be right?
Yep. I think it was that, but for a 4 marker, it would be less. It'd be like half a page. You don't have to be too particular about this, as long as you think that the evidence that you've given is sufficient in answering the question and for fostering your overall argument. I think that's fine.
So were you still particular about it during the HSC, or by that point you realized, oh, that I don't need to think about it like that, I just need to feel comfortable, maybe because you had a feel for the different mark types?
By that time, I was just writing what I could write in the HSC exams and in my practice HSC exams. I think being particular about all those micro details at the start of the year is important, so that you get used to what it's like.
Great. And what about, we won't go through all of the different marks, but just for the non-extended response questions that were still, or that still warranted a mini extended response, you could say, whether that was like 12 marks or maybe an 8 marks even, at what point were you splitting up the response into multiple paragraphs?
I'd say for an 8, 10 or 12 marker, or any of the in between, have a very short intro, and always think about your topic sentences beforehand, and think about how many there are going to be, and see if they're different enough to have different paragraphs for each, because sometimes an idea could be very similar to another, but in your head they sound totally different. In terms of when to split them up, when you're diverging away from that point and your evidence is getting a tiny bit more general, or it's shifting towards another point, then you just take it out. If you're unsure about whether you should be using a particular example or not, don't put it in.
Yeah, I talk to that because I feel like a lot of students, when they feel like they should say more because maybe they haven't filled out the space, they just kind of content dump, and they think that that's going to get them the marks.